afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we are once again here as part of our series chronicling the retrospectives of our church leadership that will be retiring at the 2021 General Conference. Today, we bring to you the Bishop of the First Episcopal District, the Chair of the AME Church Board of Trustees, the Right Reverend Gregory Gerald McKinley Ingram, His Grace, the 118th elected and consecrated Bishop of the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Today, we will have with us Chuck Hobbs. So I'm going to get out of the way, let these two Kappa gentlemen have their conversation. I'll be back in about 50 minutes to do the announcement. So Chuck, Bishop Ingram, welcome. We look forward to our conversation today.
Thanks, Brother John.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Brother Thomas, and good afternoon, everyone. I am Chuck Hobbs, bringing you greetings on behalf of the Christian Recorders Dialogues, and I am looking forward to having a chat this afternoon with my good frat brother, Bishop Ingram. Good afternoon, sir. How are you doing?
God bless you, Brother Chuck. How are you?
I'm doing well, sir. And for everyone who is joining us, as always, please feel free to leave your home church as well as district in the comment section. Again, I am Chuck Hobbs, bringing you greetings from Tallahassee, Florida, by way of Bethel AME Church under the leadership of Julius McAllister Jr. and under the leadership of also Bishop A.J. Richardson, good family friend and mentor of mine as well. Sending shout out to him as well as Supervisor Connie Richardson on this afternoon. So Bishop Ingram, I just want to jump in right quick and ask you some things. You know, I've had an opportunity to speak with you before. We had some good conversations last year in the run up to the 2020 election. And so, you know, we'll talk about some of those things this afternoon as well. But as we begin, one of the first things that I'd like to ask you is, when you were younger, at what point in time did you realize that you felt a call and wanted to get into the ministry?
Good question, Brother Chuck. Let me digress for a second.
Okay.
I remember I was about 11 or 12 years old, and my grandmother took me to church one day, and it wasn't an AME church, it was the AME Zion Church. And there was a man by the name of William Carlton Audrey. And he preached that day. I'll never forget the sermon. He preached about the man from Gadara. And I'm telling you, he was some kind of preacher. He had a kind of accent, almost like he was from England or what have you. But a very articulate man. I thought he was about 6'2". When he finished preaching, came out the pulpit, I noticed that he wasn't too much taller than me. And I was about 5'7" at that time, 5'5". And he preached on a box.
Mm-hmm.
A phenomenal man. His name was William Carlton Audrey. And at that point, I believed that, you know, I had a feeling that God was nudging me and calling me. And maybe a couple of years later, I'll never forget it. I was sleeping one night, and I had a divine restlessness, and I couldn't sleep. And it seemed like the moon was shining brighter that night than any other night in my life. And I heard distinctly God saying, "I'm calling you." That was about when I was 13 or 14 years old. Ironically, from the time I was 4 or 5 years old, I had some people in my life. My pastor at that time, he was a man by the name of Joseph Brockington. He and his lovely wife, and I lived in the projects at that time, and when we moved away, and lo and behold, the church I ended up going to once we moved was the same church he was pastoring at. So I had him and a lot of other people in my life, and I think that at a tender age, God was calling me to preach. So it started there. William Carlton Audrey became a good friend. As a matter of fact, he died not too long ago, and I was one of the participants in his funeral. So, you know, I used to kid him about it when I had a chance to come back and pastor Oak Grove AME Church. He came to preach for us, and I'll never forget that sermon. He said that preachers ought to have ears like antennas, that you can pick up things and listen to things, and God will do things. And you know, he was just a phenomenal man, along with other people. But that's how it really started at a tender age.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. Now, when you left high school, you ultimately decided to enroll in Wilberforce University, one of our top HBCUs and within our denomination. Talk a little bit about the decision-making factor that led to that choice for you.
Well, when I first graduated from high school, I was kind of wild too. And, you know, I was a halfway decent athlete. And I didn't take any of my scholarships because I was hanging out in the streets and what have you.
Okay.
And, you know, that was in June of 1965. And the Vietnam War was going on at that time too. I got a job working in a factory. It was called Dodge, Maine. And my father told me that there was no way in the world I could keep running the streets and not bring in some money of pay some rent or go back to school. Well, I elected to go and work in the factory, and a man who was a supervisor of a particular job I had, he and his son, we were very close, and they gave me the hardest job in the factory. And I lost 20 pounds in the first 2 weeks working at that job. And the war was going on heavy, right? And then I got summoned to come down and take a physical. And you had to know the neighborhood where I was from, and some of the athletes were there too. I could call some names, Spencer Haywood, Marcus and Lonnie Saunders. You might have heard of, maybe you haven't heard, there's a guy by the name of, we called him Slim, but his name is Mel Daniels. We all played in high school. He became, he was drafted by the ABA and then subsequently started playing for the Indiana Pacers. And he made the Hall of Fame just a few years ago. He's dead now. A guy by the name of Ted Sizemore, who played for the Los Angeles Dodgers, won the championship. So anyway, make a long story short, I had to go in and get my examination, and most of the people were coming out saying they got a deferment because of injuries. So I walked in there and acted like I had an injury. I did, but it wasn't necessarily where they said it was. But anyway, that was in December. In January, I wanted to go to school. I went and talked to my pastor, Joseph Brockington, able to make some contacts, and he called Wilberforce University. And at that time, the president was a man by the name of Rembert Stokes, who became one of the, as you know, one of the bishops in the AME Church. And that's how I got into Wilberforce. And going to Wilberforce, you know, it's a great experience. I made the basketball team, played for a year, became a junior counselor. I worked in the janitorial department. I mean, just that whole experience changed my life. And thankful to God for the historic Black colleges. I know you right down there with a major school, FAMU.
Yes, sir.
And the pivotal role that these Black colleges are playing, HBCUs, still has a tremendous need, and we have a tremendous need. AME Church has been very pivotal in terms of education for many of these youngsters, and I pray that that will continue. You know as well as I talked to President Paul Quinn just the other day, and the phenomenal job that he's doing. Now, a lot of people all over the country are looking at that school because of a couple of different programs he's instituted there. So we thank the Lord. And I know, you know, a few weeks ago, you all had a chance to interview my classmate, Bishop McKenzie. And that school now is growing leaps and bounds and probably one of the most outstanding Black schools we have. So make a long story short, I enjoyed my days at Wilberforce. Made the fraternity there, you know. We had a lot of experiences.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know that we'll have to talk off air about those good fraternal times that we both have had as members of Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. But what we can talk about on air is that as Noops, as well as I know that you're a 33 degree Freemason, Prince Hall. I am a Prince Hall Freemason too, bringing greetings from the Valentine Lodge number 147 here in Tallahassee, Florida. You know, a lot of people might not know that, you know, the AME Church and Prince Hall Lodges in many cities and states go way back, you know, in terms of affiliated. Yes. But what I want to ask you is, how important is it for us in the 21st century to continue to pass on those traditions, be it with regards to the Black Greek letter organizations or Freemasonry, to continue to see such bonds held for the decades and the centuries to come?
Well, Brother Chuck, as you know, and many of us who have had these experiences, several things that they do for you. The socialization is tremendously important, but it's the discipline. There are persons who, again, have served as mentors and persons that you become proteges with or colleagues with, and they pass on a lot of different core values. I think that one of the fundamental things that it does for you, particularly in fraternities and in the lodge, it shows you another aspect. It's like life is about continuous education, right?
Yes, sir.
And you can get an education from books, but I'm mindful of what Booker T. Washington said. What a man learns from a book will never be compared to what he learns from another man. And there are persons who take you under their wings. And if they're good role models, they show you some things that you've never thought about, or they teach you some things you never thought about. I have a basic theory about aligning yourself with certain people. There is what we call the novices, the proteges, and then there are the masters. And there's a phrase we use in church: as these go, let others come. Well, it's one thing to have an opportunity and you're not ready. It's another thing to be ready and you have no opportunity. And when certain people go off the scene, the question is, who's going to take their place? And again, what you learn in the fraternities, or what you learn in the lodge, going, as you know, from a wandering generality to a meaningful Pacific, is that somehow if you have been under people long enough and you learn some things, it makes you a much better person. And so I think, if nothing else, when Hiram Bliff started with the Freemasons, particularly French Hall, you know, people tried to exclude us from a whole lot of things. But sometimes you can lock more out than you can lock in. And I think that what we have garnered and learned from the fraternity or from Prince Hall Masons, from the Masonry, will be with us the rest of our lives. And no one can ever take certain experiences and opportunities you had as a result of those.
I totally agree with you, Bishop. And, you know, I would add that even in my soon to be 49 years, I turned 49 on Thursday. I can tell you that the experiences in regards to, I like how you just said about the Booker T. Washington quote about learning from another man or another woman, because so many of my mentors through the years have been either pastors, or they've been members of my fraternity, or members of the Masonic order. And you can't put a price on some of the opportunities that have been provided just because a man or a woman who found value in you said, hey, I can do something to help you get where you need to get. And, you know, the only thing that we can do, we can never repay such individuals, but we pass it on, you know. So
yes, sir.
I'm already in that posture of striving to do my best to help the younger generation that's coming up behind me as well. So with that, I appreciate your comments. I want to move a little bit into something that's a little bit more personal with you, good brother. And that is, when you look back on your distinguished career, two questions. What do you consider to be your greatest successes as a bishop? And then what have been your greatest challenges? So let's start with the successes first.
Well, I think if you point to some materialistic things, you can look at opportunities we had in terms of hosting the General Conference and some great monuments or things you left behind. That's in the piece of pointing your finger and saying here are some tangible things. But more importantly, it's about the lives, hopefully, you touch. Some people that you invested in, and you can see along the way that somehow you made a difference. And for me and my wife, you know, we've had a semblance of success, if you can call it that. We built buildings. We have every Episcopal District I was in, we done some major renovations. And incidentally, we paid for them all. She built a building in South Africa called the Balm and Gilead Center. She's hosted 2 international conferences, bringing people from all over the world. Again, I can point to some of those things, and I thank God that I had an opportunity to do them. Some of the things are second to none. When you think in terms of how old this church is, and you know, many people in the other ethnic groups have monuments or things that they can point to that they revere and they respect. I know that for the AME Church, we didn't have a statue or a major monument of Richard Allen. And so that was one of the things that we were able to do. And I thank the Lord for it. I mean, people can go by 6 and Lombard Street in Pennsylvania now, and they can see that statue. And so we all take pride in that. Many people's names are around there, and many people made many sacrifices for it. Those are some of the things that we look at. And it's ironic that you would ask me that, because I'm dealing with chronicling all the various things in my ministry, particularly in the episcopacy now, and to look back. Some of the great challenges, well, just as I was talking about pouring into people, some of the great challenges have been likewise with some of that. I think that, you know, one of the great challenges is going back to the call. Scripture says, many are called and few are chosen. But you got to be willing to make an investment. And anything people have an interest in, they make an investment with. I'm not necessarily sure about the calling on people's lives. I see in many instances, the church is suffering from the lack of attentiveness or the energy or the passion that some people put into it. I think one of the, I was writing the other day and I said that when you look at the church, you try to understand that there are basically 4 yearnings or 4 needs that people have and take an interest in the church. And I don't necessarily see it all the time with some of the colleagues of some people. And that is, people want to understand, they want to be understood, they want to belong, and they want to have some hope. When you think about how the church seemingly there's a de-development taking place. And I think one of the great challenges for us now is take a look at what our foreparents and ancestors did to make this church what it is today. And I think we got to reinvest our energy and reimagine ministry so we can make it relevant, meaningful, and important to people. And not just being a fly on the wall or anything. We really have to make people feel as though and know that there's a place for them. And I'm not necessarily sure that that's happening all the time.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that, Bishop Ingram, and which is a perfect segue to ask you this next question, which is, when we look back on those ancestors of ours and we look back on the role that the AME Church played both in abolition as well as advocating on behalf of Black people after slavery, all the way through the civil rights movement, you know, we find ourselves at a very critical crossroads yet again here in 2021 in the last 10 years with the proliferation of police violence against people of color and the emergence of the Black Lives Matter movement. I'd like to ask you, what do you see as our denomination's role being moving forward in regards to advocating on behalf of Black lives indeed mattering and ending the scourge of police brutality within our communities?
Well, good question, Brother Chuck. I think a number of things need to be said. One is, when you look at the pivotal role that our church has played, particularly some of our ancestors and some of our preachers years ago, they were persons who were willing to step up to the plate, willing to take a risk, and willing to be a voice for the voiceless. They championed all kinds of causes, even when it was unpopular. There's a certain tentativeness among some of our people now, the refusal to get involved. And, you know, one of the things that happens, you got a lot of folk that like to sit in the balcony and eat peanuts while the real game is going on. And I'll mix that metaphor a little bit. Where there's no risk, there's no reward. And there are many people who like to claim things after certain things have happened. The church still has to be on the cutting edge, and our preachers have to be involved in the movement. Why do I say that? This is probably the only profession in the world where you can take the risk, get involved, and if you're sensitive and people are sensitive to what you're trying to do, they will support you. They will undergird you. And the Black church has been free enough. And, you know, our salaries not come from Washington or from corporate America. It come from people sitting in those pews. And so I think we have a responsibility not only to be the shepherd of our flock, but we have to be those persons that stand on the cutting edge to make things happen. The Black Lives Movement now becomes the new civil rights movement. And we, out of consciousness, got to be involved with them. And, you know, we got to thank God for our young people, the millennials, who are saying in some instances that if you won't, we will. And, you know, I think that, if I can digest for a second, politically, there are some folk who want to call themselves conservatives, and some call themselves moderates, and some call themselves Democrats, some Republicans. The phrase that the Black Caucus used years ago was this: we have no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. We have permanent interest. And so we still have an interest. We got to have an interest in all those things that are going on that impact the lives of our people. And injustice anywhere is an injustice to everywhere. And you can't stand on the sidelines, and you can't be apathetic, and you can't be disengaged. The success and the opportunities we have is because some persons were willing to take the risk, step over the line, and not think about self. I'll go back to a line I used when I was aspiring for the episcopacy. There's some people who put self-interest over service. And you in it only for yourself, then you are a poor representative of the kingdom and a poor representative of the social justice movement. And so I think that, you know, in a very real sense, the church plays a pivotal role. Many of our pastors need to play that. And we got to think about those persons who bled, sweat, and died for us to be where we are now. And anyone who refuses to lift their voice or support, you know, that's a poor representative. So I hope I said something about what the church needs to do.
Absolutely. Indeed, you did. And, you know, it's interesting that when you're charging our viewers to ponder deeply about the concept of the role that we must play, you know, down here in Florida, our governor just signed legislation passed in the last session that will criminalize protest. You know, when we think back on how the Black protest has been so important to the gaining of even basic rights over the last 100 some odd years, to think that, you know, current day Republicans in the Florida legislature were adamant that, you know, because of last summer's Black Lives Matter protest, they are trying to conflate the idea of peaceful protests with being fomented by Antifa or other agents that they claim are out here doing violence. And it's a frustrating thing, because on one level, we all know that it's not true and that it's foolishness. But on the other, it gives pause for concern that, you know, we have to continue to pray a hedge of protection around all of our young people and protesters who are out here in the streets, because I sense that what these legislatures will be doing and these governors will do is give law enforcement the authority to actually hurt even more young people under the guise of, well, we were trying to stop riots and stop Antifa, when in reality, we all know that much of that is a figment of their imagination, just to be dead honest with you, and that people are just simply out here trying to exercise their First Amendment rights. And so that always gets very interesting to me to see how people pick and choose what they want to do with the Constitution. Go ahead, Bishop.
But you know, Brother Chuck, and you said that well. 2 or 3 things come to mind about it. Now I'll lift up a few quotes. Sometimes I quote too much, but the fact of the matter is, it was Frederick Douglass who said, we may not get everything we pay for, but we're going to pay for everything we get. The fact of the matter is that we cannot afford to be apathetic and sit on the sideline. There are people trying to snatch all the social advancements, all the gains that we work so hard for and struggle for. And this insidious insensitivity that's going on with elected officials, you know, and that's why we got to be very careful about who we let come in our church and make these grandstand statements or what have you. I'm always mindful of politicians are always easy to grant favors they can't deliver. And so when you want to come back and ask them, well, where were you? What are you going to do? You know, it was, who was it? Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, who said that the meals of the gods grind slowly, and yet they grind exceedingly small. Though with patience they wait on it, but they grind. But God grinds it for them all. Now we may not get it right away, because we've been some of the most patient people in the world. But you recall that Martin Luther King got in trouble, particularly in his last book, Why We Can't Wait. And in that last chapter, when he talks about the world house, those 3 evils that he talked about have not been resolved yet: war, militarism, and racism. And look what we're still facing that. That was Du Bois' argument back in the turn of the 21st century, that the problem with America is still the color line. And we have not solved this yet. And for anybody to think that, you know, we've arrived, we have not arrived. Matter of fact, Zeno said, he who starts behind a race must run faster or forever remain behind. And we're still trying to catch up, you know? So our work is still cut out for us, and that's the pivotal role the church has to play.
Bishop Ingram, you're so right. You know, earlier today, I posted in one of my blogs the headlines from last week, where in Maryland, the state of Maryland just reached a little over $500 million settlement to try to redress where Morgan State and Maryland Eastern Shore, Bowie State and Coppin State were underfunded during Jim Crow. Likewise, the state of Tennessee is in the middle of studying what it will do in regards to trying to release funds that were withheld from Tennessee State University during Jim Crow. And so I post those things, Bishop Ingram, because, you know, so many times these days you'll have like people who will opine on social media or even in traditional media that make comments about, oh, the Black colleges are behind and they need to be doing this and we need to be giving more. And sure, as a people, we should give more to our HBCUs, but people are missing the point if they don't realize that not the private HBCUs that are funded by our denomination or other Christian denominations, but the public HBCUs in particular have been underfunded from the very first. And so there's no question why, as majestic as Florida A&M's campus is, and as many great programs as this great university has down here in Tallahassee, we still are behind FSU in Florida in regards to program offerings and buildings and all sorts of things. And that's systemic. It's systemic then, and it still remains. And so that's why my mind was boggled a few weeks ago, good brother, when the whole issue where Senator Tim Scott and even our beloved Vice President Kamala Harris were opining that America is not a racist country. And I mean, and I know with regards to Vice President Harris, I know that was somewhat of a political comment that she was trying to make, because she doesn't want to step on the toes of some of her benefactors who don't want to hear that. But we're not politicians, so we can always be very real and candid in regards to America was racist and it remains racist to a great extent, and we have to push back to try to quell that.
You know, you said something so profound, and I want to piggyback on what you said and enlarge upon it.
Yes, sir.
When we were talking about politicians, what have you. Now, we sometimes become too satisfied with the that do. What I mean by that is this. One of the great challenges we have with our politicians and people is, and I raised this with some of the bishops on the bench, that one of the things we need to challenge all our elected officials and some of our governments with is to say, who do you bank with? Now, we don't have access to a lot of things, only because the banking system has a way of circumventing and preventing you from getting access to what other people get, you know? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things we need to challenge all of our elected officials, particularly those that are in close proximity to us or that depend on us. We need to say that they need to at least deposit 10 to 15% of their money into black banks. And the reason for that is then our people, will have greater access to some of the things that they might want to do. You know, back in the 30s, what have you, when they started the favored nation clause.
Yes.
They provided monies for every ethnic group in the world but black folk. And that's still happening.
Yes, sir.
You can come from another part of the world and won't have some of the restrictions that we have, right? Back in the 60s, they had the Model Cities program, and they were trying to implement, it was Johnson's New Era piece, right? And they were talking about the New Deal, not the New Deal, the New Era, the Great Society. And they were providing monies for the inner city. They had the Model Cities program. So I think that, you know, we can try to challenge some of our people, challenge some of our politicians to make access for monies so some of our people can enter into the private market and do something with black businesses or small businesses and make jobs available for our people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Bishop Ingram, I also want to ask you a little bit about this. You know, one of the other things that we're seeing across the country, you know, after the 2020 election, Joseph Biden was able to defeat Donald Trump and defeated him quite handily, if I might add. And yet that still did not stop the former president from claiming that the election was stolen from him. And as a result, we now see in Florida, where I live, and across the South, and even as far out in Arizona, you have a number of Republican majority state legislatures who are out trying to create all of these laws that they claim are to have voter integrity. But in reality, when you scratch beneath the surface, you see that they are voter suppression laws, Jim Crow 2.0, to be honest with you. So with that in mind, I want to ask you, what role should AME pastors and lay members play in regards to pushing back against these types of legislation that particularly could have a chilling effect on our ability as a people to vote moving forward?
Well, we've seen this before, Brother Chuck, as you well know. Whenever there's a great movement going on, there's another movement of people trying to circumvent it from happening. And we have to, again, be the voices, champion causes, and reimagine what we can do. I used a phrase the other day about one of the things about imagination is that as you think about it and try to make certain changes, that you can never shortchange yourself. There's people sometimes say that we ought not lift our voices, we ought not be engaged, we ought not. I mean, that's the sense of timidity that impacts some folk only because they can be satisfied almost with nothing.
Mm.
The point is that if we don't respond, not just react, but if we don't respond and get up and make some fundamental changes, then we're going to suffer and suffer tremendously of what's going on now. And it's happening. I need to put my charger on just so.
Okay.
I think that one of the things that's happening now, Brother Chuck.
Yes, sir.
Is that as we move forward, they see now that people of color are getting ready to change this whole world, and they're changing this whole nation. And so it's no secret what they're trying to do. They know now. You right there where you are. They said that Sister Val might challenge Rubio, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I hope so. But Rubio is a very interesting man. If anybody ought to be championing some causes, he should be one. And sometimes people get convenient amnesia. They forget from where they come. And he's one of them. But that whole phenomenon that's going on now about voter suppression, they said they're making laws for the benefit of who? They won't even let people give folk water when they go out to vote. Have you ever heard anything like that?
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
And so, you know, you think about it. There was a piece said years ago that how far in life depends on your being tender with the young, compassionate with the old or the aged, sympathetic with those persons who have less than you, because at one point in your life, if you live long enough, you're going to be experiencing all three of them.
Yes.
Now here we are. We are dealing with a climate right now where President Biden and Vice President Harris are trying to get balance so people can have a sustainable living, right?
Yes.
But then you have these Republicans trying to snatch everything away. So it's not just the votes, it's our livelihood, it's our very existence. And if we're not careful, folk will become extinct. And they're trying to just pull everything back, so make us go back 100 years. And that's not going to happen.
I agree, Bishop Ingram. We're going to work hard to make sure that does not happen. Now, shortly, I'm going to ask you we're going to take a look at your acceptance speech and what have you. But before we do that, I want to ask you one other question that's in the world of the political world, because I enjoy chopping it up with you on these subjects. And that is with COVID-19. You know, one of the things that I have really appreciated ever since the pandemic started, two areas. Number one, I have always tipped my cap to our educators who almost overnight had to figure out a way to deliver lessons to children remotely in the schools, all the while dealing with safety issues for themselves. I can't say enough about our educators. I mean, there are other professions also that were on the front lines, but I have a particular soft spot for those educators who had to adjust last March and are still adjusting on the fly. But also, I have so much respect for our pastors and our churches who had to adjust as well, where, you know, you can't have indoor services, so had to figure out a way to do virtual models, or like down here in Tallahassee, get communion where you can drive through and get your communion and what have you, and get a special word from your pastor. With that in mind, as we move forward, we know that the CDC last week issued an order that basically says if you have the vaccine, that you don't have to wear a mask indoors or outdoors. Now, good brother, I'm going to tell you, I'm still wearing my mask and what have you. I've been vaccinated, but I don't trust that the next person standing next to me in the grocery store got their vaccine. So I'm going to put the mask on because I do know that there's still a chance that you can get it, whether you've had the vaccine or not. But with that in mind, what are your thoughts about our churches reopening within the next 30 to 90 days? And then also, what is it that we can do as a denomination to try to get more Black people to take the shot? I mean, down here in the South, there are so many instances where we are still lagging behind whites and Latinos in regards to taking the shot. So I'm going to let you take away. When will the churches reopen? When will be safe for that? And then number two, what can we do to increase the number of Black people who are getting vaccinated?
Yes, sir. Well, that's a subject, Brother Chuck, that runs the whole gamut to this extent. I know there's some people who are very zealous and very eager to get back into their churches. But we have to have people somewhat refrain from going there too quickly. I'm like you. I wear my mask. And I know that my wife and I, we've taken our vaccinations. I'm not sure if everybody has. And while we have a sense of optimism and hope that things are getting better, and I've been using the phrase about light at the end of the tunnel, well, it is. But at the same time, we take the risk of going in too early, or if you have not sanitized a building carefully, we don't know what it is. You got mold in churches, right? But now we got this virus. So they're going to have to be some people really get their churches clean, and that's going to have to be on an ongoing basis. I do think, I'm not sure about the next 30 days, but if they practice the social distancing. Now, there are places in our district where the state governments have allowed people to come back already, and some are. I've asked our people not to, or if they do it in a very cautious manner, and some will be going back. The fact of the matter is that CDC, I wouldn't say have been vacillating. They've been very cautious and very concerned and passionate about what they're doing. And I think that some great signs and great advancements have been made. Thank God that the vaccinations are working, and they are. Not young kids, they're talking about now, I think youngsters, 12 and up?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the hesitancy that many of our people have, and we go back into, I wouldn't say antiquity, but we go back, people still dealing with the Tuskegee Institute piece that happened, back in the 50s with the syphilis and all that. And our folk have a real hesitancy about taking these shots. Well, you got to come out of the cocoon a little bit. I think the advancement of medicine and the trust level. And that's why a whole lot of people are looking at us, I'm saying people in various professions, because people trust their leaders. And I'll go back to that for a moment too. You asked me, how can we get our people to take these vaccinations? Well, it's almost like being evangelists now. We have to say to our people that I got a sense of trust, and I believe that these vaccinations are going to be good for the nation. And the amount of deaths have subsided, though people are still dying and people still being impacted by it, but not at the rate that it was. And so slowly, inexorably, we can see some positive signs going on. And I got a number of persons who still want to get the shot that have not gotten it. Then you got some folk from all ethnic groups still resisting taking them. It's interesting that you're down there in Florida and all over the Southern Belt, you got the major evangelical white folks saying they're not going to take it. And you got a lot of Republicans, the leaders, right, say they're not going to take it. Why? And so we're giving false signals out to people. And so I don't know, how do you change the atmosphere? How do you change the culture? You do it one day at a time, one person at a time, and those persons who were impacted by it, I'm sure that if some of their loved ones could come back, they probably would have, not probably, I'm sure they would take the vaccinations too. So we got to pray, and not only pray, but we have to become ambassadors of hope, and say that, let's take the advice of those persons in major professions, particularly the science fields and the medicine, that it's going to work for our good, okay?
Absolutely, and that's a word. Now, with that, my boss man, our brother John Thomas, editor of the Christian Recorder, has nudged me to ask you to go ahead and talk with us a little bit about your acceptance speech. And so,
you know what? I don't know what I said that night, that day. My wife, who's a great coach, was next to me and telling me, don't forget to do it. I hope that I mentioned all the bishops and preachers and people who are so pivotal in my life, my church, my family. And I thank God for them. My wife was a good campaign manager. And she still is that now. But
amen. Amen. I think our producer might have it up and queued.
Yeah. I had a lot of hair on my head. Tonight, I'm a blessed man. I want to thank God for all of you. I can't hear it.
Yeah. I'm struggling with the sound on my end too, good brother.
Yeah.
But y'all look sharp. Look like you're overcome with joy here, both of you.
Was elected in this city 36 years later. But that was a great night, Brother Chuck.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Night. Bishop Norris, Bishop McKenzie, and Bishop Preston Williams, it all came together for us. And I thank God for, at that time it was Bishop Thomas. I talk about some of those persons again. That was a man who was a colleague, but he was one of my fathers in ministry, right?
Yes. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
No doubt. And it's amazing again for us to be able to share this with you. Your remarkable career and to learn a lot today about how you got your beginnings and many of the things that you have advocated. We can tell that those within your churches, as well as within your district, as well as AMEs all across the country, have benefited from your wisdom and your steadfast preaching of the Word of God. And I know that I always am overjoyed with the opportunity to sit on this platform and chop it up with you about not just things spiritual, but things political as well. Yeah. And so, yeah,
you're one of the great journalists. I tell you that. I appreciate you.
Well, sir, thank you kindly, Noop. I mean, we try to achieve, so that you just made my day most definitely. Job. Okay, yeah, no doubt. And so we're going to send out the link to your acceptance speech with the full volume, so that all of our viewers can take a listen and hear what our great bishop said on this auspicious night, and so we can all cherish it the same in the days ahead. And with that, good brother, let me ask you this: as you start to look toward the next steps in your life, what can we expect from Bishop Gregory Ingram? What do you have on tap moving forward?
You sound like my wife. She said, "What are you going to do next?"
Well, I'm sure she has some things that she wants you to do. I'm sure she's got a list of things that she wants you to accomplish, right?
I'm really trying to put it in perspective, Chuck. I think I might try to do a little teaching. I'm going to do some volunteer work. I'm going to spend some time with my grandkids. Try to stay in reasonable portion of health and strength, and do some walking and, you know, some exercise, do some reading, and really, you know, try to be a mentor for some people, right?
Yes.
I think that's the real challenge. My life is, God has spared my life so many times, and so I owe something back. Just people invested in me, I got to invest back in some other people now. So it's not over. As far as active episcopacy is over, but I'm gonna find something to do and enjoy my life.
Yes, sir. And you deserve that and more. And we will be watching with great interest and looking forward to hearing more from you in the days ahead. And with that, I will return the microphone to Brother John Thomas, again, the editor of the Christian Recorder. And I know that he usually likes to take us out. And he should be coming in right about now. All right.
Thank you, Brother Chuck.
Thank you, good brother. Yes, sir.
I was going to recite Invictus with him. You know,
well, I'll recite it with you when you're ready.
Out of the night that
covers me, black as a pit from pole to pole. We thank whatever gods may be for our unconquerable soul. There it is. We have not winced or cried aloud under the bludgeonings of chance.
My head is
bloody, but I'm bowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears, moons of the heart of the shade, and yet the minutes of the years finds and shall find us unafraid.
Matters
not how straight the gate, charge and punishment the scroll. We are the masters of our fate. We are the captains of our soul. Good new pie. Enjoy reciting that with you. Yeah, that's right. One time for Phi Nu Pi. I know our friend John Thomas he's sitting there jealous.
If there was ever anyone that showed what achievement looks like, it was you two. Bishop Ingram and Chuck, thanks for being here. Before you go, Bishop, I've been getting nudged. Dr. Jessica is around here someplace, so we want to definitely acknowledge and share our love and appreciation for her part in your Episcopal ministry. And we also understand that you have a retirement celebration coming up, and we have the link for all the information. And if you want to say a few words about just, how people can participate, how people can share with you as you and Dr. Jessica celebrate your 20 years of the episcopacy, can we show the link where the celebration is?
Okay. Do you
we have it. We have it. I'm just waiting on our tech team to pull up the banner. There it is. All right. So tell us about the celebration. Mm-hmm.
Well, it's going to be the 16th, 17th, 18th of June at Greater Allen Cathedral. I'm sorry, the 17th, 18th, and 19th. Greater Allen Cathedral, and has some outstanding, phenomenal preachers. We have President of the Council, Michael Mitchell. Your Bishop Richardson, will be saying some things. We have Doctors Marcus Cosby, E. Dewey Smith, Joanne Browning, who really, they're going to have a night for my wife, and she deserves it, great lady of God. They're going to have a night for me, I guess, and then the closing ceremony will be that Saturday. Reverend Jessica and I will be the worship leaders, and E. Dewey Smith. So we're looking forward to it. 21 years, John. We got an extra
21 years. That's right, 21 years. Yeah,
wow. Got an extra year because of COVID. But,
yeah.
I thank the Lord for our district. I mean, people have just been extremely nice and kind and wonderful. And really, all the districts that I presided over, we're going to have people coming from various places all over. And so I think I'm looking forward to it. I've been holding back a lot of tears and everything, and it hit me the other day. But I'm looking forward and see what the end's going to be.
Amen.
Looking forward to sharing with you in that. We'll be sharing virtually because we were told that due to COVID restrictions, there are about 40 people who can be at Allen Cathedral. So I won't be there, but my blessing will get to you before the blessing will be to you before the retirement celebration. But
you know what's so interesting about that, Brother Chuck?
Yes, sir.
Because you're in the political circles, what have you, right? But when you ask the question about Wilberforce, right? When I first went to Wilberforce, one of the first persons I met, he was working in the kitchen, and that was Floyd Flay. I was working in the janitorial department. Floyd just recently retired. Now I retire. The culminated service is going to be at his church.
Okay.
I'm retiring at a friend, brothers, and Dr. Thomas, you and Chuck, on that stage when we got elected, you will see Floyd Flay. Now our lives have been intertwined so much. When I had my investiture as the president of the Council of Bishops, it was Dr. Flake who was the speaker. So he and his wife, Elaine, my wife, we've been close for a long time. And how fitting it is that, the culminating aspect worship service is going to be at a good friend's church. And going to be on Floyd Flake Boulevard, too.
That's right.
5-mile stretch.
Nice.
Named after him.
Yes, sir.
So we have a few announcements, and Bishop, if you're going to stay on, we'd like you to give a final word after we do our announcements.
Yes, sir.
So our next dialogue will be May 27th with Dr. Robert Richard Allen Turner at 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We will be doing a special dialogue about the Tulsa, Oklahoma burning massacre. Chuck did our interview with Dr. Turner last year. This year, the interview will be done with Mr. Antoine Seawright. And also next week coming up will be an important documentary from the History Channel on the Tulsa Massacre. And we encourage you to understand and learn because, again, the only building that survived the Tulsa Massacre was the AME Church in Greenwood, Vernon AME Church. So please be with us next week for that interview. So we invite with you to share with our virtual Bishop, General Officer, and Judicial Council candidate forums on May 30th and June 6th. We sent the email out originally about that on yesterday. We'll be sending out another reminder. And also on the Christian Recorder YouTube page, you will see videos from many of the candidates. And we will have the candidates here and we will be dialoguing with them. This will not just be a, hi, my name is, and this is my number. No, we are going to have conversations with all of the candidates who are showing up. And we encourage you to join us on May 30th and June 6th. You don't want to miss this. You want to be informed because we need to know and understand and hear who wishes to serve God Church. We encourage you to support the Christian Recorder by buying $36 a year. Visit thechristianrecorder.com. Earlier this week, as a gesture of goodwill, due to difficulties we've been having at the publishing house, the publisher and the editor decided to email out the full copies of the May and April editions. March was emailed on Monday. April will be emailed out on Friday. That does not mean we are not doing printing. What that means is that during this pandemic, with all of our resources stretched, we're doing our best to serve you. So take a look at those editions. Please continue supporting us. We need your donations. We need your support. We need your subscriptions. $36 a year, one of the best investments you can make with ChristianRecorder.com. We invite you also to support the AME Church Publishing House for your church, school, and worship needs. Visit amecpublishing.com. The marquee product right now is Christianity in Context. We have a slide for that is on the YouTube channel right now. We encourage you to use that. There are some very innovative educational materials regarding faith, discipleship. You want to visit the AME Church Publishing House YouTube, and we'll be sending an email about that out again. Christianity in Context. And also, this week is celebrating Pentecost. The AME Church Publishing House has released Pentecost resources. So for all your AME worship needs, please visit iamame.org. iamame.org. We emailed out the resources. We've put them on the YouTube page. We put them on Facebook. These are there for you to use for your worship. Pentecost is Sunday. Please join us by using the resources. And also, we are thankful for our sponsors today. Our sponsors are two good alpha men who decided to sponsor these two good Kappas speaking today. So we have Beeman for Bishop from the 1st Episcopal District. We'll wait for his flyer to come up. That's Foster for Bishop. Beeman for Bishop. Yes.
All right.
And J. Augustine for Judicial Council.
Okay.
The National Chaplain Alpha Alpha, who thought it not robbery to spend some time and donations helping out these two Kappas. So before we go, Bishop Ingram talked about Chuck's journalism. And Chuck, I believe you have a special opportunity you need to tell our listeners about.
Absolutely, brothers. I appreciate the opportunity. So I've been writing for about 15, 16 years, and most of the times I've written for free. I've gotten some pay. The best paying has been the Christian Recorder. Thank you so much, Boss Man John. But also I've been able to earn some pay from time to time from the Hill and the Griot and other venues. But of recent vintage is I have decided to step out on faith and monetize my Observation Point newsletter. And it's so far so good. God is blessing me. And I'm asking for our viewers, if they are so inclined, to consider subscribing to the Observation Point newsletter. I break down politics and social issues 5 days a week, and am not afraid to call a spade a spade. I guarantee you that. And so with that, rates start at $5 per month, and I'm appreciative of everyone in advance who will help the cause of supporting independent Black journalism. So thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on that, Brother Thomas.
Yes, we believe in appreciating our own. We have great columnists here who are AMEs, and some of them are just people who want to write for us, who want to share. And we just want to thank you for what you're doing. And we'll be sending out an email about that as well. But, you know, we talk about media spaces and journalism and the need to do things. Chuck, we're proud of what you're doing. We support you, and we encourage our readers to support you as well.
Thank you, good brother.
We're an AME publication, an AME interview, and today we've celebrated Bishop Ingram. And so in our tradition, we allow the Bishop of the Church to give us our final words as we go forward. Bishop Ingram.
Hey, Brother John, I want to thank you, sir, for the job you're doing and the exposure that you're getting an awful lot of people. And I want to commend you, sir, for having this forum with these candidates. I shared with you, and I think I shared it with Chuck. This was something I wrote back in 1999. And the things, these were my platform issues. There were 7 then, there's 10 now. Things I said I wanted to do as a bishop, by the grace of God, we and my wife and I have been able to accomplish all of it. It wasn't just talk. It was really getting behind, stating some things that I wanted to do. Brother Chuck, I want to commend you, sir, for the job you're doing, your journalism, your expertise, your professionalism. I mean, you two brothers, for me, are the shining stars. I mean, you shine like, well, you burn like embers and you shine like stars. And you all have been doing an excellent job. And I pray that God's continued blessings upon you as you move forward. And Chuck, to know that you're going to, you're doing this newsletter. I think the political aspect that you talk about is very meaningful. And I want to go back to Sister Val and Rubio. I mean, she needs to, if she's running, we need to get behind her, and you let us know what we can do. Thank you, Brother John. May God be with you all. May God bless you.
Thank you, Bishop. We'll run our COVID PSA, and we will see you all next time.
It was made to save game nights and marquee lights. Tuesday Night Live, good vibes, and the Sunday Drive. It was made to save family meals, turkey naps, and taffeta. It was made to save 9 to 5s and just being able to provide. It was made to save the lifesavers. It was made by the best among us to be effective. The COVID-19 vaccines were made to save. They were made to save us.
See y'all next time.